The modern world runs on movement. Flights before breakfast, road trips on a whim. But, if you rewind to 1800s America, life moved at the speed of boots on dirt. For most folks, the horizon wasn't a destination. It was a boundary. The truth is, many Americans lived and died within 10 miles of where they were born. Not because they lacked curiosity, because the world made leaving brutally hard. Let's break down why staying local wasn't just normal. It was survival. Travel was slow, exhausting and risky. Movement in the early 1800s wasn't an adventure, it was a gamble. Roads were often nothing more than muddy tracks carved by wagons and hooves. Rain turned them into traps. Winter froze them solid. Summer dust choked travellers and animals alike. A 10-mile trip could take half a day on foot, longer with a wagon. And every mile meant risk. Broken wheels, sick horses, bandits, injury. If something went wrong, help wasn't a phone call away. It might not come at all. Before railroads, distance felt massive. Most people worked where they lived. America in the early 1800s was overwhelmingly rural. Families farmed their own land or worked nearby plots. Blacksmiths served local communities. Millers ground local grain. Shopkeepers sold goods to neighbours they had known since childhood. Work wasn't centralised, it was local and personal. If your income depended on daily labour, leaving town meant losing money or risking your crops. And farming especially chained people to place. Fields needed constant attention. Livestock needed feeding. Harvest windows were short and unforgiving. Travel wasn't just inconvenient, it could ruin your year. Communities were tight and self-contained. Most towns were built to function on their own. Churches, markets, schools and tradespeople all sat within walking distance. People married locally, bought locally, worshipped locally. Social life rarely stretched beyond the next village. In many areas, a person didn't need to travel far because everything necessary already existed nearby. Life revolved around seasons, neighbours and routines, not exploration. Even news moved slowly. A letter might take weeks to arrive. Newspapers circulated regionally. If the outside world felt distant, it was because information about it arrived at a crawl. Travel cost more than most could afford. Money was a huge barrier, Hiring a stagecoach or boat passage cost serious cash. For working families, travel expenses could equal months of income. Food for the journey, lodging, lost work time. It all added up fast. Unless travel promised real economic benefit, most families simply couldn't justify it. For many, the only long-distance move they ever made happened once in a lifetime. Migration westward, marriage, military service. Otherwise, home stayed home. Transportation networks were still developing. America was growing, but infrastructure lagged behind. Early canals helped connect regions like the famous Erie Canal, which transformed trade in the Northeast. But such projects were limited in reach. Railroads began spreading mid-century, eventually linking coasts through projects like the Transcontinental Railroad. Yet before those lines expanded, vast areas remained isolated. For millions living far from major routes, travel still meant horses, wagons, or walking. Progress existed, but it hadn't reached everyone yet. Safety concerns kept people rooted. Disease spread easily during travel. Medical care was limited. A simple infection could become fatal miles from home. And then there were natural hazards. Rivers without bridges, forests without maps, weather without forecasts. Storms, floods and heat waves could turn journeys deadly. For families with children, the safest choice was often staying put. You know, social expectations really encouraged stability. Stability itself was seen as a virtue, something to be proud of. Loyalty to land, family and community truly mattered. Frequent movement? Well, that could even raise suspicion among neighbours. Folks trusted what was familiar. Generations often lived on the very same property. Family homes were passed down through the decades, and cemeteries sat beside churches filled with ancestors. Roots weren't just a metaphor back then. They were physical, real, as the dirt under your boots. Leaving permanently meant breaking networks of support. And in a world without safety nets, those networks were everything. When people did travel, it was for, well, really big reasons. Long journeys usually followed major life events: war service, land opportunities, gold rush dreams, religious missions, or government incentives like settlement programs. When Americans moved west under policies like expansion acts, it wasn't casual tourism, no sir. It was a calculated gamble for land, survival and legacy. For the average person, travel wasn't leisure. It was a life-changing risk. The idea of travel as leisure barely existed. Today, travel equals fun, but back then it meant necessity. Tourism, as we know it, simply hadn't developed yet. Resorts, national parks and vacation culture came later, once transportation improved and middle-class incomes rose. In the 1800s, leaving home without a strong reason looked irresponsible. Time away meant lost labour, lost income and, well, potential danger. Adventure belonged to explorers and soldiers. Ordinary people stayed where life worked. So, how did everything change later on? By the late 1800s, railroads expanded, steamships improved, and cities grew. Industrial jobs concentrated populations. Suddenly, travel became faster, safer, and sometimes even affordable. People started commuting, visiting relatives farther away, and seeking opportunities beyond their hometowns. The world slowly shrank, bit by bit. But for much of the century, distance still ruled daily life. Why does all this matter today? Well, understanding how rooted people once were really changes how we see history. It reminds us that mobility isn't natural, it's built. Roads, trains, wealth and safety systems all made modern movement possible. Those earlier Americans weren't less curious. They were just constrained by reality. Their world was small, not by choice, but by circumstance. And that makes their rare journeys even more powerful. Every migration, every wagon trail, every risky voyage meant stepping into the unknown with everything on the line. That takes courage, plain and simple. If you enjoy uncovering the hidden truths behind everyday history, make sure you subscribe to Ancient Roots Uncovered and share this video with someone who loves the past as much as you do.